Hello and welcome in yet another video lecture. I am Chandraprakash Tiwari, PGT English, Kendriya Vidyalaya Ara. In the first part of this chapter, the interview, we saw how interview flourished as a genre in journalism and what are the various opinions of famous personalities regarding interview. In part 2, it is itself an interview of Umberto Eco, an Italian novelist. And this interview was published in The Hindu and it was later anthologized by Christopher Sylvester in his book of interviews. Fine, so let's begin. The following is a part of an interview of the Italian novelist named Umberto Eco. He said that he wrote novels on Sundays. Mukund Padmanabhan from the Hindu newspaper interviewed him. Umberto Eco was a professor at University of Bologna, Italy at that time. He was famous for his thoughts on semiotics, interpretation of writings, and the beauty of Middle Ages. So before we begin to talk about Umberto Eco and interview, what is beauty of interview and what is the essential feature of interview and how do we get benefited from it? You know that everyone does not write autobiography. Everyone is not filmed. But in the form of interviews, people's ideas, opinions, and their informations are recorded and recorded forever. So even in 2021, we can easily access the interview given by Umberto Eco and can know about their lives, about his method of writing, about his ideas. So this is the beauty of interview, that we can have first-hand knowledge, first-hand perspective of the person whom we seek to know something. It's not possible about Tulsidas, it is not possible regarding Kalidas, because we don't have any kind of interview given by them, because interview as a genre did not exist that time. We do have books of Tulsidas, we do have books of Kalidas, we do have books of Harshvardhan and all those great people of medieval era and ancient era, but we don't have their first hand narration, we don't have their first hand perspective, because their fiction writing, their poetry writing is something else. But in interview it is so candid talk that we do have a very fresh and very genuine kind of information. So this is the beauty. Now we can begin. So in this interview, Mukund Padmanabhan, he is a journalist of a very prestigious and one of the most ancient newspapers of India, The Hindu. And in this interview, he talks about, he wants to know the methodology of writing, the ways of writing, and the opinions regarding different things of Umberto Eco. Umberto Eco was a professor at the University of Bologna, so he was an academician in Italy, and he was famous for his thoughts on semiotics. So for you, semiotic is study of sign, SIGN, interpretation of writing, and the beauty of Middle Ages. So he is interested in three things: semiotics, interpretation of writings, means a kind of criticism, and then the third is beauty of Middle Ages, means he was interested in medieval era. Later he turned to write fiction, but apart from these three things in the initial part of his life, later he turned to write fiction and he became a novelist. He wrote a variety of literature, fiction, academic texts, essays, books for children, and articles for newspapers. So he is such a diverse writer and he is such a prolific writer, and he has penned down different kind of things: fiction, academic text, essays, books, and books for both children and adult, and then articles for newspapers. He rose to fame in the year 1980 when his book titled The Name of the Rose became a bestseller. So he was already a famous academician, but you know that academicians are not that much popular. Their name and fame are only remain only confined to the academic circle. But he rose to an international fame when he published his novel The Name of the Rose in 1980, and the entire world came to know about him, and it became a bestseller. The interviewer begins by praising Umberto Eco and quoting the words of David Lodge, where he mentioned that it is out of his capacity to understand how one person could be good at so many things. So this is the beauty of interview, that everyone wants to know that how such a single man can single-handedly do so diverse work. Is it possible that the same question can be asked regarding Mahatma Gandhi? That he is a single man, single handedly did a lot of things. He was a writer, he was a politician, he was a social reformer, he was a lawyer, and many more things. So, how is it possible that a single man can do so many things? So, people want to know these questions and they seek answers, but they cannot directly confront Umberto Eco nor Mahatma Gandhi. So, this is the job of interviewer, that they ask these questions on behalf of audience, and everyone gets benefited. That they come to know about what are the methods and how can we also manage our time and can do such works. So he asks these questions, that David Lodge mentions that it is almost difficult to understand, almost beyond capacity to understand, that how one person could be good at so many things. And then Umberto replied by specifying that maybe it looked like he did a multiple distinct tasks, but according to him he was always doing the same thing. Mukund curiously asked him about the same thing that Eco found himself doing. He found it difficult to put it into words, but began by saying that he had a specific philosophical interest that he continually sought to pursue through his academic works and novels. And then Umberto replied that no, he has not done very diverse work. Uh, it looks like that he has been doing diverse sort of jobs, diverse kind of works, but ultimately, fundamentally, all these works are the same, because he has been interested in philosophies, and all his academic writings and even his novel, his essays, the source or the inspiration of all these works are the philosophy itself. Even his children books, they are also based on same theme, philosophical theme. So that's why it has been very easy for him, because it's not diverse, but it is ultimately the same. Talking about his books for children, they all talked about non-violence and peace, which were again based on ethics. Even his children books were based on ethics, that is a part of philosophy. So these children books are also not different from his core strength, that is philosophy. Then he talked about his secret, that he worked in empty spaces of time. And then he reveals his secret, that how does he manage time, because he was an academician, and academician, it is a full job. You have to take lectures in university, you have to attend seminars, workshop, and you have to uh, write your articles. So how does he get time to write these children's novels and different things? So he says that he do works in empty spaces of time. He called them interstices. According to him, these empty spaces were very crucial. If you remove the empty spaces from the atoms or from the universe would be very compact, just as big as his fist. And he puts a lot of emphasis on these empty spaces of time, or on these empty spaces. He says that empty spaces in anyone's life plays a very significant role, and one must respect it, one must utilize it, because every day we spoils a lot of empty spaces of time. And throughout the life, if we count it, it would be so huge that half of our life or quarter of our life will be spoiled like this. So what is this interstices in the terms of Umberto Eco, or this empty passage? He makes it clear with the help of an example. If he was expecting someone over, that is, someone was coming to his house, and the guest took the elevator from the ground floor to his flat on the third floor. As Umberto waited for the guest, that time was an interstice, and he used that interstice to write an article. So now it is easily clear that when we expect any guest, so we keep waiting for the guest and we spoil our time. And it's not only about guests, but whenever something is about to happen, or whenever we wait for something, so we usually sit idle and we do not do anything else, and this way we spoil a lot of our time. But Umberto Eco utilizes this time, and this time is labeled as interstice, and by this way he is able to do such colossal work. Fine, I hope that it is clear. That is how he worked in such empty spaces of time, which many people waste by sitting idle and waiting. So, my dear students, you have to also be like Umberto Eco, and you also need to utilize your free time. I know that you have a lot of things to do, you have many subjects to study, but we can utilize our time in a very advanced and smart manner like Umberto Eco. And that's why these interviews are so beautiful, that we come to know that how these great persons work. Mukund mentioned that what he did was undoubtedly unique. His scholarly articles were very different from the usual academic style. The usual academic style lacked personal touch and was dry and boring. On the other hand, Umberto's writings had a certain playful and personal touch. He asked Eco that did he intentionally adopt an informal way of writing, or was he being natural? So the second question about the informal style of his writing, because he was an academician, and academic writing is very formal and very intricate. It contains a lot of formalities, it contains a lot of formal style. But Umberto Eco did never follow this formal style, and he has his own way of writing. So he asked that why, how he did was undoubtedly unique. Means, why did you go away from the formal style of writing, the usual style of writing? Was it intentional, or it was natural? Umberto narrated his story from his time in Italy, where a professor told that his thesis was very different from others. He had told his story along with including the trials and errors that happened during his research. Others, on the other hand, made false assumptions, corrected them, and put conclusion. So, how his academic writing or research writings are different from others? That Umberto even includes all the trials and errors during the course of his writing, during the course of his research, and he mentions all those trials and errors, all his loopholes, all his weaknesses, his errors, and he does not try to showcase that he has been infallible, or he has not made any mistake. But other writers do so, means they always correct their wrongdoings, and finally when they come with their print, it is always in a very corrected form. That is a kind of conclusion. So Umberto Eco presents the entire pictures all the mistakes made by him, all the errors committed by him, and then he comes to a conclusion. So that's why it becomes interesting. This was the reason why the professor even published his thesis as a book. At the age of 22, he realized that his way of writing was the correct way, and that his why his essays were always in the narrative tone. Probably this was also the reason why he started writing novels at the age of 50. On the contrary, his friend Rolla Barthes always wanted to be a novelist, along with being an essayist. So even in article writing, even in research thesis, his style of writing was like a fiction writing. It was like a narration, and it was never objective. Means article writing is a sort of objective task. You do not express yourself. It is never ever subjective, and that's why it is very formal and serious in tone. But this is something unique in Umberto Eco, that even his thesis writing was way different from others, as if it was narrated by himself. It was his subjective experience. Means he had a germ of novel writing, he had a germ of fiction writing, and he had a unique style of narration right from the beginning, and that's why in the age of 50 he switched to novel writing. On the contrary, his friend Rolla Barthes, a very famous critic and a structuralist, he also wanted to be a novelist along with being an essayist. So Rolla Barthes was an essayist, and he has written a very famous and great essays. But at the same time, he wanted to be a novelist. But novel writing is absolutely a different thing. You need to be very subjective, and you need to have very rich emotional faculty and a flight of imagination. So all these things help you to write fiction and novel. Unfortunately, he died before he could do it, but Rolla Barthes could not do so, while Umberto Eco did. While for Eco it happened by accident, but novel writing satisfied his hunger for narration. So this hunger for narration was something embedded, was something innate in Umberto Eco, and that's why it was reflected even in his academic writing. Pointing out his novels, Mukund mentioned that he became astoundingly famous after the publication of The Name of Rose. From a famous academic, he went on to become a famous novelist, though he had written many more scholarly works than novels. So, though he has only written 5 novels, but he has written a number of scholarly articles, scholarly works. But even his fame rests on his novels. Umberto Eco corrected that he had written over 40 non-fiction pieces. Amazed at hearing about Eco's over 40 scholarly articles, one of which was on the study of science, he asked if he was at all bothered when people remembered him as a famous novelist. Umberto Eco replied to Mukund by accepting that yes, it did bother him being identified as a novelist. So even Mukund Padmanabhan was ignorant about his writing. He knew that he had only written 5 novels, but the fact is that he had written over 40 non-fiction pieces, 40 scholarly articles. Means his writing is so diverse. Means it is something surprising that how a single man can dodge this much of work. But then he puts a question that whether you would be like to remembered as a novelist, or does it hurt when someone remembers you as a novelist? He says, yes, I want to be remembered by I want to be remembered as an academician also, because each and every work demands a lot of hard work, uh, study, research, and I have done for both. Means even I have invested my time and energy in my academic writing when I was a professor, when I was an academician. So I want to be remembered as an academician as well, apart from novelist. Umberto, on the other hand, identified himself with the academic community because he considered himself a university professor who wrote novels only on Sundays. So he said that my major work, my core area is my teaching. I have been a professor, and out of the 7 days in a week, I work as a professor for 6 days. So I have invested a large chunk of my life in that field. That's why I wanted to be remembered as a professor, university professor. He also attended academic conferences as opposed to pen clubs and writers' meetings. And his life was also uh, not much related with pens clubs, writer meetings, and literature. He attended mainly academic conferences. So his preference is absolutely clear that his preference is towards academics, not towards literature. But on the other hand, Eco accepted that he was well aware that by writing novels he was reaching a wider audience, because 1 million people would not obviously be interested in stuff on semiotics. But at the same time, he is aware of his popularity, and that popularity was based on his novel writing. He says that I am professor of semiotics, and very few people are interested in semiotics because these are very grave areas, very serious areas. So I know that I am popular because of my novels, not because of my articles. Mukund changed the topics and mentioned that The Name of the Rose was a very serious novel, and still it managed to attract a large audience. It dealt with detective stuff and also metaphysics, theology, and medieval history. He asked Umberto if he was at all surprised by his success. Umberto replied that he was not at all surprised. The only people who were surprised were journalists and publishers. So this is a brief information about his novel, The Name of the Rose, and its subject matter, that it is also the same: metaphysics, theology, detective stuff, and medieval history. So in the beginning, he told very clearly that I do not do anything apart from philosophy, and that's why though my works look very diverse and different, yet fundamentally it is the same. So even this novel it is also based on metaphysics, theology, and medieval history. So now you can easily understand that how he was able to do diverse work, because he was doing diverse work but of the same area. This was because it was commonly believed that people liked easy writing, easy reading experiences, and trash, while the truth was that through his novel, he reached that small percentage of population who liked challenging reading experiences. He understood this because he himself yearned towards shows like Miami Vice or Emergency Room after dinner, but not all day long. So he said that I became popular because I know the secret of easy reading experience. Because though I am an academician, though I am a professor, yet I also like to watch or like to read some light things, and that's why I wrote this novel, The Name of the Rose, which is lighter in vein, and people love such writing like Miami Vice or Emergency Room. These are two very famous American TV serials and very popular TV serials. So apart from serious things, that lighter things become very popular. So though Umberto Eco has invested a lot of time and energy in serious writing, and that is more beneficial for people. Yet his lighter writing made him popular. So it is very natural that lighter things become popular, and so is in the case with Umberto Eco. He asked Umberto about the possibility of success of the novel having to do something with its association with medieval history. Umberto did not negate the possibility as he began to tell a story, which he thought that he did like a Chinese wise old man. And then it was a question that whether is there any hand of medieval history behind the success of his novel, and he did not negate even this idea that it may be possible that because of the uh, medieval era background his novel became famous because he did like a Chinese wise old man. It means in China there has been a tradition of narrating stories, and he had narrated that story in that Chinese fashion. He mentioned that his American publisher expected not to sell more than 3,000 copies, as in a country like hers. No one had even seen a cathedral or studied Latin language. So, American publishers were convinced that his novel would not be sold more than 3,000 copies. Because in America, people even do not there are millions of people who had not even seen a cathedral or studied Latin language. So, Latin is a medieval language, and cathedral means something related with religion. And his novel was based on religion, philosophy, and medieval era. So, the publishers said that the people of America, they are not interested in cathedral, philosophy, and religion. So, who would read this novel? Not more than 3,000 people. But to their surprise, they ended up selling around 2 or 3 million copies. Look at this difference. Where they were expecting only 3,000 copies to be sold, it was sold more than 2 or 3 million copies, means 30 lakh. Umberto considered the success of his book a mystery. Had it been written 10 years earlier or later, the situation would have been different. So this is all about the interview, and if you want to read the entire interview, you can Google it, and you can listen the life and legacy about Umberto Eco in a BBC podcast. There is a podcast, the book club of BBC, and there is an interview of Umberto Eco, and that is about his book, The Name of the Rose. Thank you for watching this.